Welcome to our deep dive into the life and times of Tsuji Jun, a pretty important figure in early 20th century Japanese Dadaism.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
You're interested in learning more about specifically how this movement connected to other philosophies and like the socio-political context of the time.
Right.
So we'll be focusing on that today through his life and work, using this very thorough academic text as a guide.
Sounds good.
Oh,
So Tsuji's life story is really quite remarkable.
okay.
You know how it intersects with so many different intellectual currents of his day.
Hmm.
He was a Japanese Dadaist, anarchist, philosopher,
Wow.
and ultimately a Buddhist monk.
Oh,
Even his appearance was like a statement in itself.
really?
Yeah. Imagine like rocking a business suit with traditional Japanese clogs,
What?
playing the shakuhachi.
Oh, what is that?
It's a type of Japanese bamboo flute.
Okay.
And then peppering his Japanese writing with all these foreign words.
I see. I'm definitely intrigued.
Yeah.
He sounds like a walking contradiction.
It really was.
But it's not all just for show, is it? He actually produced a pretty substantial amount of work.
Absolutely. Tsuji was a prolific writer, translator,
Yeah.
and artist.
So he wasn't like just dabbling in Dadaism. He was a key contributor to the movement in Japan.
He really was.
So let's get into that a bit.
Okay.
You mentioned Japanese Dadaism.
Right?
Can you give us a little bit more context for this?
Sure.
Was it just a copycat of what was happening in Europe, or did it have its own distinct characteristics?
It definitely had its own unique characteristics.
Okay.
So Japanese Dadaism emerged in two waves. The first in the early 1920s,
Okay.
and the second known as Neo-Dada after the 1923 Great Kanto earthquake.
Right.
And this event had a seismic impact on the movement,
Really?
similar to how World War I influenced European Dadaism.
I see.
It was a time of tremendous upheaval, forcing people to confront like the fragility of life and the absurdity of the systems that they lived under.
So literally and figuratively, this earthquake really shook things up for the artistic landscape in Japan.
It did.
How would you say that the Japanese version of Dadaism differed from what was going on in Europe?
Well, for one, it wasn't as cleanly separated from other contemporary art movements,
Okay.
like surrealism and futurism.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like crossover with artists kind of blending elements from different styles.
I see.
Additionally, while European Dadaism was very explicitly anti-war,
Yeah.
Japanese Dadaism grappled with themes of modernity, tradition, and identity in a rapidly changing Japan.
It sounds like a really dynamic and complex period.
It was.
And then within this context, we have Tsuji Jun weaving together this fascinating mix of seemingly disparate philosophies like egoism,
Right.
nihilism, Epicureanism, and Buddhism.
Yeah.
How did he bring these all together?
It's funny because he actually found a common thread through all of them.
Oh, okay.
And that common thread was the concept of nothingness.
Yeah.
This wasn't about despair or apathy.
Right.
It was about recognizing the illusory nature of fixed meanings and structures. He drew parallels between Max Stirner's idea of the creative nothing from egoism, which posits that the self is a construct,
Okay.
and the Buddhist concept of mu, or emptiness, which emphasizes the impermanence of all things.
So for Tsuji, nothingness wasn't like an ending. It was more of a starting point.
Exactly.
For him, it was a liberation from imposed values and like a gateway to authentic self-expression.
Yes.
It's like that quote from Stirner, all things are nothing to me.
Right.
How did this idea of nothingness play out in Tsuji's art?
So in his poem Absurd, for instance, Tsuji uses these really unconventional metaphors and dark humor and jarring imagery
Okay.
to disrupt conventional ways of seeing and thinking.
Interesting.
Like lines such as, harlots' white blood cells
Okay.
and drooling away life's resources.
Wow.
It challenges traditional aesthetics and forces us to confront like the uncomfortable realities that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life.
He definitely wasn't afraid to push boundaries and make people feel uncomfortable.
No, he was.
It's like he's using language to break down those structures that he saw as meaningless and then build something new and unexpected out of the pieces.
That's a great observation.
Yeah.
His art was definitely a form of rebellion against all these societal norms and a celebration of individual freedom.
Mhm.
He wasn't just creating art, he was living his philosophy, blurring the lines between personal expression and a political statement. And this was evident in his vagabond lifestyle,
Yeah.
his unconventional relationships, and his outspokenness in a time of increasing censorship and political oppression in Japan.
It's almost like he was living a performance art piece, constantly challenging the status quo and daring people to question their assumptions.
Yeah.
It's interesting to consider how his translation of Cesare Lombroso's The Man of Genius in 1914 might have set into this.
Uh-huh.
Lombroso argued the genius often comes with a price.
Yeah.
Eccentricities, deficiencies, even madness.
Yeah.
Do you think Tsuji was consciously playing with that idea?
It's impossible to know for sure. But the text does highlight some pretty intriguing parallels.
Okay.
You know, Tsuji's bohemian lifestyle, his self-proclaimed status as a lunatic, and the infamous Tengu incident.
Wait, the Tengu incident? What was that?
Okay, so picture this. A party, everyone is having a good time.
Correct.
And suddenly, Tsuji climbs to the second floor, starts flapping his arms and yells, "I am the Birdman!"
Oh, wow.
Then he jumps down, runs around, and jumps onto a table, still shouting.
That escalated quickly.
It did.
So was this like just a drunken stunt, or is there something more to this?
You know, it's hard to say.
Okay.
Could this have been a sign of a mental breakdown?
Right, because the text does mention that he was later institutionalized.
It is difficult to say for certain.
Yeah.
Some speculate it was a genuine break,
Right.
while others see it as like a calculated act of Dadaist performance art,
Right.
pushing the boundaries of social acceptability to their absolute limit.
Regardless of the cause, this incident seemed to mark a turning point in his life.
It did.
He renounced his writing career and surprisingly chose to wander as a Komust monk.
Yeah.
A Komust monk.
Okay.
What exactly does that entail?
Well, Komust monks were wandering Zen Buddhist monks known for their very distinctive headwear.
Okay.
This woven basket-like hat that covered their entire face,
Oh, wow.
symbolizing the shedding of ego and worldly attachments.
Oh.
They played the shakuhachi flute, often in public spaces, as a form of meditation and spiritual practice.
So this was a pretty radical shift for Tsuji from outspoken rebel to silent monk.
It was.
Was it a genuine spiritual transformation, or was it a way to escape the increasingly oppressive political climate of 1930s Japan?
Well, you know, it's difficult to say.
Yeah.
Or maybe if we think about the creative nothing concept, maybe it was his way of shedding his previous identity and embracing true nothingness.
Yeah, it's a fascinating question.
It is.
And the answer might be a combination of all of those factors.
Okay.
His choice to become a Komust monk with its emphasis on anonymity and detachment from worldly concerns.
You know, it could very well be seen as a way to reconcile his philosophy of nothingness with the increasing pressures of life in pre-war Japan.
Right.
It's a paradox that really embodies the spirit of Tsuji Jun, a man who embraced both extremes, the chaotic and the serene, the individual and the void.
That's a perfect lead-in to our next section, where we'll explore how Tsuji's approach to Dadaism differed from that of his contemporary Takahashi Shinkichi, and how this difference reflected their varying interpretations of Buddhism and egoism.
Great.
Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
So, you know, it's interesting how both Tsuji and Takahashi, key figures in Japanese Dadaism, were deeply influenced by Buddhism.
Right.
Yet they had such different interpretations of it.
Yeah, the text definitely pointed that out, and I was hoping we could dig into that a bit more.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Do you elaborate a little bit on their different viewpoints?
For sure. So Takahashi saw egoism as inherently selfish and incompatible with Buddhist teachings on, like, compassion and selflessness.
Yeah, okay.
He believed that true liberation came from transcending the ego, not indulging it.
Okay.
Tsuji, however, found a way to reconcile these seemingly contradictory philosophies.
Oh, yeah.
He saw egoism not as egotism, but as a path to authentic self-expression,
Okay.
which, when paired with the Buddhist understanding of emptiness, could actually lead to a more liberated and fulfilling life.
So for Tsuji, embracing the creative nothing wasn't about becoming narcissistic.
No.
It was about recognizing the illusory nature of the self.
The exact.
And using that to break free from these societal expectations and live authentically.
Precisely. He believed that by acknowledging the impermanence of all things, including the self,
Yeah.
one could detach from these rigid identities and embrace the freedom to create their own meaning and values.
Right.
And this really resonated with his Dadaist spirit, which, you know, rejected these established norms and celebrated individual expression.
So it seems like he was able to find a nice middle ground between these two philosophies,
Yeah.
taking what resonated with him from each of them and forging his own unique path.
Exactly. And this unique blend is reflected in his lifestyle choices, his art, and even his decision to become a Komust monk.
Right. It wasn't about adhering to like a rigid dogma.
Yeah.
It was about finding a way to live in accordance with his personal truth.
Right.
This makes his choice to go the monastic route even more intriguing.
It does.
If embracing the self and individual expression were so central to his philosophy,
Right.
Why choose a path that traditionally emphasizes self-effacement and anonymity?
I think that's where the beauty of Tsuji's perspective lies.
Okay.
He didn't see these concepts as mutually exclusive.
Okay.
He viewed the Komushu path with its emphasis on shedding ego and embracing emptiness
Yeah,
as a further expression of his belief in nothingness.
I see.
You know, by relinquishing his worldly identity and becoming this wandering anonymous figure, he was, in a way, embodying the creative nothing,
That's true.
becoming a living embodiment of his philosophy.
Almost like a performance art piece in and of itself. By disappearing into the anonymity of the komusu, he was making this powerful statement about the fleeting nature of identity and the freedom that can be found in letting go of all those attachments.
It's a very insightful observation, and it speaks to the core of Japanese Dadaism,
Okay.
which often blurred the lines between art and life,
Right.
using everyday experiences as a canvas for expression and challenging these conventional notions of what art should be.
I'm curious about how Tsuji's work was received during his lifetime.
Yeah.
Was he like a celebrated figure, a misunderstood rebel, or something in between?
It's hard to say.
The text mentions he had a fan club,
Yeah, he did.
but also faced a lot of criticism and ridicule for his unconventional lifestyle and his ideas.
He was definitely a polarizing figure. As we discussed earlier, newspaper articles from his time portray him as both a yukata-clad god of drinking and a deviant genius.
It sounds like he was both celebrated and criticized,
He was.
which is really a testament to his ability to provoke and challenge the status quo.
Absolutely, and his influence extended beyond just those immediate reactions to his work.
Oh, okay.
His translation of Lombroso's The Man of Genius, with its exploration of the link between creativity and unconventionality,
Yeah.
resonated with artists and intellectuals in Japan and internationally,
Wow.
contributing to these ongoing discussions about the nature of genius
Okay.
and the role of the outsider in art and society.
So it seems like he was tapping into this kind of universal fascination with those who dare to be different.
Yeah.
Those who challenge norms and push boundaries, even if it means facing ridicule and misunderstanding.
Exactly. And he did so with this unique blend of intellectual depth, artistic experimentation, and a really playful sense of humor.
He did.
His work, his life was a challenge to easy categorization, you know, defying expectations and prompting us to reconsider our own assumptions about art life and the meaning of it all.
So if we were to try to distill Tsuji Jun's legacy into a few key takeaways, what would those be? What can we learn from his life and work even today, decades later?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I think his story highlights the importance of individual expression,
Okay.
of finding your own voice and using it, even if it means going against the grain.
Right.
He reminds us that true freedom comes from questioning received wisdom, challenging norms, and embracing the inherent absurdity of existence.
Okay.
And perhaps most importantly, he teaches us that embracing nothingness isn't about nihilism or despair.
Right.
It's about recognizing the fluidity of meaning and the potential for creating a life that is truly your own.
It's kind of like that famous Dadaist quote, "Art is a fruit that grows in man, like a fruit on a plant or a child in a mother's womb."
Exactly.
It's about this creative expression that springs from the depths of our being, not from adherence to external rules or expectations.
Yes, and that brings us to another key takeaway, the power of living life as art.
Right.
Tsuji didn't just create art, he lived it. He blurred the lines between art and everyday experience, using his life as a canvas for self-expression and social commentary.
This brings us back to that question of his legacy. Beyond his individual works, what lasting impact did he have on the Japanese Dadaist movement and beyond? So we've talked about how controversial Tsuji Jun was, both celebrated and criticized during his life.
Right.
But how did his work and ideas influence Japanese Dadaism as a whole?
Well, Tsuji's influence on the movement was profound and multifaceted. He's often credited as one of the founders, and his work embodied its key characteristics. Rejection of tradition, fascination with the absurd, penchant for social commentary, emphasis on individual expression.
And we've talked about his role as a writer and artist. But the text also mentioned that he was a prolific translator. Introducing all these Western ideas to a Japanese audience. How did that factor into his legacy?
Well, his translation work was crucial in shaping the intellectual landscape of Japanese Dadaism. You know, by translating works like Lombroso's The Man of Genius. He introduced his contemporaries to European avant-garde thought,
Right.
and this fostered a dialogue between Eastern and Western artistic and philosophical traditions.
So he wasn't just like importing Dadaism wholesale.
Yeah,
He was helping to create this uniquely Japanese interpretation of it,
exactly.
infused with elements of Buddhism, anarchism, and traditional Japanese aesthetics. And his impact wasn't limited to just introducing new ideas.
All right.
He was actively engaged with artistic circles,
Yeah.
collaborating with other artists, publishing in all these avant-garde journals, even forming his own group, the Anti-Literature Society,
Yeah.
which was dedicated to challenging these conventional literary norms.
He was a real force of nature.
It sounds like he was a catalyst for the movement,
Yeah.
both through his own creative output,
Right.
but also his role in fostering a vibrant artistic community.
And his legacy extends beyond specific works or movements.
Okay.
I think his life story serves as a powerful example of the creative potential that can be unleashed when we embrace individuality,
Yeah.
challenge the status quo and dare to live life on our own terms.
He reminds us that art isn't something we just create.
Yeah,
It's something we embody.
exactly.
It's about approaching life with a sense of playfulness,
Yeah.
experimentation, and a willingness to question everything.
Absolutely. And perhaps that's the most enduring lesson we can learn from Tsuji Jun, the power of nothingness as a source of creativity and liberation.
Yeah.
By recognizing the impermanence of all things, he found freedom from all these stifling conventions and created a life that was both deeply personal and profoundly influential.
It's amazing how he found liberation in that very idea that terrified so many others.
I know.
Instead of clinging to all these fixed meanings, he embraced the void
Right.
and allowed it to become this wellspring of creativity and authentic self-expression.
And in doing so, he left this indelible mark on Japanese culture and beyond,
Yeah.
inspiring generations of artists and thinkers to embrace the absurd, challenge conventions, and live life as a work of art.
This has been a truly enlightening deep dive into the world of Tsuji Jun
It has.
and Japanese Dadaism.
Yeah,
He was such a complex and contradictory figure,
he was.
but without a doubt a fascinating one.
Definitely.
He reminds us that sometimes the most profound insights come from the most unexpected sources.
It's true.
Who would have thought that a birdman dancing on a table could offer such profound lessons about art,
I know, right?
life, and the freedom found in embracing nothingness?
It's crazy.
We hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to explore further.
We do.
Tsuji Jun's story is a reminder that the journey of self-discovery and creative expression is ongoing,
Yeah.
and that sometimes the most fulfilling path is the one less traveled.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Tsuji Jun's life and work.
Yes, thank you for listening.
We encourage you to continue questioning, exploring, and embracing the creative potential that lies within you.
Until next time, keep diving deep.